Some men buy Teslas when the marriage gets rocky. I check credit card bills. Less fun, more revealing. My name is Grant Halston, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered my wife was screwing her old college flame while planning to take half my assets in a divorce she thought I'd never see coming. It started on a Tuesday morning in October when I found a receipt for champagne that cost more than my monthly car payment. Elise claimed it was for a client celebration. Funny thing about being a tax consultant for 20 years, you develop a nose for bullshit that could sniff out a lie from 3 zip codes away. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Honey, I said, waving the receipt like a tiny flag of surrender, when did your graphic design clients start requiring Dom Perignon for logo approvals? Elise barely looked up from her phone, fingers dancing across the screen with the intensity of a concert pianist. It's called relationship building, Grant. You wouldn't understand. She was right about one thing. I didn't understand. I didn't understand why my wife of 15 years suddenly needed inspiration dinners 3 nights a week. I didn't understand why she'd started hiding her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes. And I definitely didn't understand why she'd begun giggling at text messages like a teenager who'd just gotten asked to prom. But I was about to learn. My assistant Miriam knocked on my office door that afternoon, carrying coffee and wearing the expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. "Boss, we need to talk," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "And you're going to hate this conversation." Miriam was 32, sharp as a scalpel, and had been with my firm for 5 years. She also had the unfortunate habit of being right about everything, especially things I didn't want to hear. "Lay it on me," I said, though part of me already knew where this was heading. "Your wife's been texting someone named Cory at all hours. I know because she accidentally sent one of those texts to your business line last week. Something about meeting at the Meridian Lounge and how you wouldn't understand their connection." The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted like battery acid. "Cory Lane? You know him?" Did I know him? Cory Lane had been Elise's college boyfriend, the guy she'd supposedly outgrown before we met. Rich, smug, and blessed with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to work for anything in your life. He'd married Alicia Westbrook, old Boston money, the kind of woman who could freeze you with a glance and had probably been born wearing pearls. "We've met," I said, "at parties. He works in private equity, drives a Maserati, and has the personality of a tax audit." Miriam winced. "Well, apparently your wife finds tax audits very inspiring these days." That evening, I did what any reasonable husband would do. I turned into a detective. Elise had left her laptop open, and her email was logged in. I'm not proud of what I did next, but pride is a luxury you can't afford when your marriage is circling the drain. The emails painted a picture that would make a divorce lawyer salivate. Months of correspondence, starting innocent enough with catching up and escalating to messages that would make a romance novelist blush. My personal favorite was Elise writing, "You're so much more exciting than quarterly reports and tax seasons." Apparently, I was being compared unfavorably to a man whose biggest achievement was inheriting his father's business connections. I called my best friend Terry, who happened to be the best divorce attorney in Boston. We'd known each other since law school, back when we thought we'd change the world instead of just billing it by the hour. "Terry, hypothetical question. If someone's spouse was cheating and that someone had documentation, what would be the best way to handle it?" "Grant, please tell me this is actually hypothetical." "Let's pretend it is." Terry sighed. "Well, hypothetically, I'd suggest gathering evidence, securing assets, and preparing for war. Also, hypothetically, I'd recommend not doing anything stupid like confronting them alone." "What if I had an ally, say the other cheated spouse?" "Now that," Terry said, and I could hear the grin in his voice, "would be interesting." I hung up and stared at Alicia Lane's contact information, which I'd found in our old party photos. Some conversations change your life. I was about to make one of them. "Mrs. Lane, this is Grant Halston, Elise's husband. I think your husband and my wife are having dinner tonight. Care to join me for dessert?" The silence on the other end stretched long enough for me to question my sanity. Then Alicia spoke, her voice cold as January in Boston. "Mr. Halston, I've been waiting for this call. Where shall we meet?" The Meridian Lounge sits in Boston's Back Bay like a jewel in a crown. All dark wood and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where deals are made and marriages are destroyed. Alicia Lane arrived wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and an expression that could have been carved from granite. "Mr. Halston," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I assume you have proof of what you're suggesting?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the location data I'd been tracking. 2 little dots on a map, Elise and Cory, together for the third time this week at the same upscale restaurant. Your husband's been taking my wife to dinner, I said. Unless they're discussing the tax implications of graphic design, I'm thinking this isn't business. Alicia studied the screen with the intensity of a general reviewing battle plans. Cory thinks I don't pay attention to his schedule. He's wrong about many things, but that's his biggest mistake. We entered the lounge together, looking like the world's most dangerous dinner party. The hostess tried to seat us, but I spotted them immediately. Corner booth, intimate lighting, Elise laughing at something Cory was whispering in her ear. There, I said, pointing. Table for two, side order of Betrayal. Alicia's smile could have cut glass. Perfect. I brought party favors. We walked over like we owned the place, which, given Alicia's family money, she probably did. Elise saw me first, her face cycling through confusion, panic, and something that might have been relief before settling on defiance. Grant, what are you doing here? Funny story, I said, pulling out a chair. Alicia and I were just discussing our spouse's sudden interest in fine dining. Mind if we join you? Cory had gone pale, but he managed to summon his usual arrogance. This is a private dinner, Grant. Perhaps you should call first next time. Oh, I did call, Alicia said sweetly, sitting down without invitation. I called my attorney. Cory, darling, you've been served. She slid a manila envelope across the table like she was dealing cards. Divorce papers, signed and notarized, with a property settlement that would leave Cory with roughly enough money to buy a decent used car. Elise's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Alicia, this is crazy. We're just friends. We were just talking about old times. Talking, I interrupted, pulling out my own folder. Is that what you call it when you text someone about how much you miss their touch? Because I have screenshots, Elise. Lots of them. I spread the printed messages across the table like a poker hand. Months of evidence, romantic dinners, hotel receipts, and text exchanges that left no doubt about what had been happening. Cory's shirt was misbuttoned, I noticed. Elise's lipstick was smeared. They'd been doing more than talking tonight. Grant, please, Elise started, but I held up a hand. Save it. I know about the hotel rooms. I know about the weekend trips you claimed were client meetings. I even know about the lingerie you bought last month, the stuff I never got to see. Miriam appeared at our table like an avenging angel. I'd asked her to meet us here, but I hadn't told Elise she was coming. Sorry I'm late, Miriam said, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic was murder. Oh, hi, Cory. Fancy seeing you here. Cory's face went from pale to green. Miriam, what am I doing here? Well, I thought Elise should know that she's not your only side piece. Cory's been texting me too, haven't you, sweetheart? All those late nights when you told your wife you were working? You were working all right, working on getting me into bed. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ice melting in someone's drink 3 tables away. Elise turned to Cory with murder in her eyes. You were cheating on me while you were cheating on your wife? It's not like that, Cory stammered. Miriam, you said you understood? I understood that you're a lying piece of garbage, Miriam said cheerfully. That's why I've been feeding Grant information for weeks. Every hotel, every restaurant, every stupid romantic text you sent, I kept copies of everything. Alicia looked impressed. I like her. You can't do this, Elise said, her voice rising. This is harassment. This is justice, said a voice behind us. We all turned to see Harold DeWitt, Elise's biggest client, standing with a drink in his hand and disappointment on his face. I couldn't help overhearing, Elise, you've been billing me for client dinners while you were having affairs? That's fraud. Elise went white. DeWitt's account represented 60% of her income. Harold, I can explain. No need, he said. Consider our contract terminated. I'll be expecting a refund for those fraudulent dinner charges. He walked away, leaving Elise staring at the wreckage of her career. Cory stood up abruptly, knocking over his wine glass. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, Alicia said quietly. We're not finished. Something in her tone made Cory sit. Alicia Lane might have looked like a socialite, but she had the presence of a woman who'd crushed bigger men than him before breakfast. Here's what's going to happen, she continued. You're going to sign these papers tonight. You're going to move out of my house by tomorrow, and you're going to disappear from our lives forever. If you don't, I'll make sure every business contact you have knows exactly what kind of man you are. You can't destroy my career over a personal matter, Cory protested. Alicia's laugh was like breaking glass. Darling, I don't need to destroy your career. You've done that yourself. I just need to tell people about it. I turned to Elise, who was frantically trying to process what was happening. As for you, sweetheart, I've frozen all our joint accounts. The credit cards, the savings, everything. You want to play house with Cory? You can do it on your own dime. You can't do that, she said. That money is mine too. Actually, I can. Adultery voids the prenup you forgot you signed. Terry explained it to me this afternoon. Elise's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face crumpled. Zero balance, she whispered. The Uber's going to be a problem, I said sympathetically. But I'm sure Cory will give you a ride. Oh wait, Alicia's taking his car too, isn't she? Among other things, Alicia confirmed. The Maserati, the boat, the condo in the Hamptons. Cory's going to discover that adultery is an expensive hobby. Cory looked like he was about to cry. Alicia, please. We can work this out. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Months of moments, Miriam corrected. I have the receipts. Literally. The manager appeared at our table, drawn by the commotion. Is everything all right here? Perfect, I said, standing up. Just settling some old business. Alicia, shall we go? I think our work here is done. As we walked away, I could hear Elise calling my name, but I didn't turn around. Some bridges you burn, and some you blow up with dynamite. Tonight, I'd brought the whole construction crew. Outside, Alicia and I stood in the cool October air, watching through the window as Elise and Cory argued in increasingly desperate whispers. That was satisfying, Alicia said. It was, I agreed. But we're not done yet. She raised an eyebrow. Oh? They're going to regroup. They're going to try to fight back, and when they do, we need to be ready. Alicia smiled, and for the first time all evening, it looked genuine. Mr. Halston, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. The next morning brought rain and revenge in equal measure. I was in my office by 7, drinking coffee that could strip paint and planning the systematic destruction of my wife's life. It sounds harsh when you put it like that, but I prefer to think of it as aggressive asset protection. Miriam arrived with a stack of files and a grin that belonged on a shark. Good news, she said. Elise spent the night at the Marriott downtown, on Cory's credit card, which Alicia canceled at midnight. The front desk called her at 6 a.m. asking for alternative payment. Beautiful, I said. What else? I may have accidentally sent those screenshots to the Boston Design Guild's newsletter editor. You know, the ones where Elise talks about how easy it is to overcharge clients who don't understand creative work. I looked at Miriam with something approaching awe. You're terrifying. I'm giving you a raise. Already added it to payroll, she said. Also, Terry called. He wants to meet for lunch to discuss strategy. The strategy meeting took place at a steakhouse downtown, the kind of place where power brokers go to divide up the world over medium rare beef. Terry had brought files that would make the IRS weep with joy. Grant, your wife is screwed, he said without preamble. The prenup is ironclad, the adultery evidence is overwhelming, and her business is about to implode. But there's something else. He slid a document across the table. Cory Lane's been embezzling from his own company. Small amounts, but consistent. I have a contact at his firm who's been watching him for months. I studied the numbers, my tax consultant brain automatically calculating the implications. This is enough to destroy him. It gets better. Alicia's family owns 40% of his company. They can force him out anytime they want. Jesus, I said. She's not just divorcing him, she's erasing him. The Lane family doesn't do anything halfway, Terry said. When they destroy someone, they make sure there's nothing left to rebuild with. My phone buzzed. Text from Elise. We need to talk. I'm coming to the office. I showed Terry the message. He grinned. Perfect timing. I brought a court reporter. Elise arrived an hour later, looking like she'd slept in her car, which, given her financial situation, she might have. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her makeup was smudged, and she had the desperate look of someone who'd finally realized how deep the hole was. Grant, please, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. We can work this out. It was a mistake, a midlife crisis. I'll end it with Cory, I'll go to counseling, whatever you want. I leaned back in my chair, studying her like she was a particularly interesting tax problem. Elise, do you know what I do for a living? She looked confused. You're a tax consultant. I'm a forensic accountant, I corrected. I find things people try to hide, money, assets, income streams. And you know what I found when I really started looking at our marriage? I opened a file on my desk. You've been planning this divorce for over a year. The secret credit cards, the money you've been moving to accounts I don't know about, the consultation with a divorce attorney last spring. You weren't having an affair, Elise. You were building an exit strategy. Her face went white. That's not... You were going to clean me out, I continued. Take half the business, half the house, alimony, the works. Cory was just supposed to be your emotional support while you destroyed my life. Terry stepped into the office, followed by a stern-looking woman with a stenography machine. "Mrs. Halston," Terry said formally, "I'm representing your husband in divorce proceedings. This conversation is being recorded for legal purposes." Elise looked around the room like a trapped animal. "You can't do this. I have rights." "You had rights," I said. "Past tense. You voided them when you decided to commit adultery and fraud simultaneously. Did you really think I wouldn't find the money you've been hiding?" The court reporter's fingers flew across her machine as Elise's carefully constructed plan fell apart in real time. "The secret account at First National," I continued, "the cash you've been skimming from client payments, the credit card you opened in my name without my knowledge. It's all here, Elise. Every transaction, every lie, every dollar you tried to steal." She started crying then, big ugly sobs that would have moved me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like the noise a leaking tire makes. "I want a lawyer," she said. "Good idea," Terry replied. "You're going to need one. We're filing charges for credit card fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. The divorce is just the appetizer." My phone rang. Alicia's name appeared on the screen. "Excuse me," I said, answering. "Alicia, how's your morning going?" "Wonderfully," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the speaker. "Cory's been arrested for embezzlement. It seems someone tipped off the authorities about his creative accounting practices." Elise's sobbing stopped abruptly. "Arrested?" "Oh, yes," Alicia continued. "He's looking at 5 to 10 years, assuming he can make bail. Which he can't, since I've frozen all his assets pending the divorce proceedings." I hung up and looked at Elise with something that might have been sympathy if you squinted hard enough. "So here's the situation," I said. "You can sign these divorce papers right now, agree to the settlement Terry's prepared, and walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else. Or you can fight this, lose everything in legal fees, and probably end up in prison next to your boyfriend." She stared at the papers like they were written in Sanskrit. "What's the settlement?" she asked quietly. Terry slid another document across the desk. "You get your personal belongings, your car, and $50,000. In exchange, you waive all claims to marital assets and agree never to contact Grant again." "50,000?" she said. "That's nothing. This house alone is worth $500,000. "The house you tried to steal," I pointed out, "along with my business, my retirement accounts, and my sanity. 50,000 is generous, considering you'll be lucky to avoid prison." Elise looked around the room one more time, seeing her options evaporate like morning mist. Then she picked up the pen and signed her name with the defeated scrawl of someone who just learned that karma keeps excellent books. "There," she said. "Are you happy now?" I thought about it for a moment. Getting there. After she left, escorted by building security to make sure she didn't steal anything on her way out, Terry and I sat in comfortable silence. "You know," he said finally, "I've handled a lot of divorces, but I've never seen anyone plan revenge quite like this." "I learned from the best," I said. 20 years of tracking down hidden assets teaches you a lot about human nature." "What's next?" I looked out the window at the Boston skyline, thinking about Elise and Cory sitting in their respective hells, probably wondering how their perfect plan had gone so spectacularly wrong. "Now we make sure they stay down," I said, "because the thing about people like them is they never learn the first time." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Miriam. "Boss, you need to see the news. Channel 7 is running a story about corporate embezzlement, and guess whose mugshot is on the screen?" I turned on the TV just in time to see Cory's face staring back at me from the morning news. The anchor was discussing his arrest, his affair, and the web of deception that destroyed 2 marriages and multiple businesses. "In related news," the anchor continued, "local graphic designer Elise Halston has been dropped by several major clients following revelations about fraudulent billing practices." I turned off the TV and smiled. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor after all, but the universe wasn't done with us yet, not by a long shot. 3 weeks later, I was beginning to think the worst was over. Elise had moved out, Cory was awaiting trial, and my life was settling into a new normal that didn't include checking credit card statements for suspicious charges or wondering where my wife was spending her evenings. I should have known better. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday morning when Miriam burst into my office looking like she'd seen a ghost. "We have a problem," she said. "A big one." I looked up from the tax returns I'd been reviewing, noting the panic in her voice. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where your ex-wife and her boyfriend are planning to crash Mr. DeWitt's corporate gala tomorrow night." I set down my pen. "How do you know this?" "Because Elise called here an hour ago, drunk off her ass, ranting about how you destroyed her life and she's going to return the favor. She thinks DeWitt's event is where you're announcing some big new client contract." "She's not wrong," I said. DeWitt had referred 3 major corporations to my firm, and tomorrow night's gala was where we'd be signing the contracts. But how does she plan to crash a $500 a plate charity dinner? Miriam pulled out her phone. She's been posting on social media about it. Look at this. The Facebook post was a masterpiece of drunken fury. Time for the truth to come out about Grant Halston and his business practices. See you tomorrow night at the Fairmont, you bastard. I scrolled through the comments. Elise's remaining friends were cheering her on, calling me everything from a monster to a sociopath. Someone had shared the post 63 times. It gets worse, Miriam said. Cory made bail yesterday. His family put up their house as collateral. Jesus, I said. Alicia know about this? I called her first. She's on her way over. Alicia arrived 20 minutes later wearing a black suit that looked like armor and an expression that could have melted steel. She sat down across from my desk and placed her purse carefully on the floor. Gentlemen, she said, we have a situation. So I hear, I replied. Your ex-husband is out of jail. Temporarily, she said. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is that Elise has been calling my friends, my family, and my business associates, telling them that you and I are having an affair. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What? She's claiming that we planned this whole thing together, that we've been sleeping together for months, and that we destroyed our marriages so we could be together. She's even got fake hotel receipts. Miriam looked confused. But that's insane. You two barely knew each other before this started. Try explaining that to the Boston social scene, Alicia said dryly. Gossip travels faster than light in this town, and the truth is always less interesting than a good scandal. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. How bad is it? 3 of my charity board positions are under review. My country club membership is being questioned, and my mother called this morning to ask if I'd lost my mind. We'll fix this, I said. We'll prove she's lying. Alicia's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Oh, we'll do more than that. We're going to end this tomorrow night, once and for all. She opened her purse and pulled out what looked like a small electronic device. What's that? I asked. Insurance, she said. Cory doesn't know I had his phone cloned months ago. Every text, every call, every photo he's taken since January, including the ones from last night. She pressed a button, and Cory's voice filled the room, tinny but clear through the device's speaker. Elise, baby, don't worry about the money. Once we destroy Grant's reputation tomorrow night, we can sue him for emotional damage. My lawyer says we might get millions. But what if people don't believe us? Elise's voice slurred with alcohol. They'll believe us. Rich people love watching other rich people fall. We just need to make enough noise, cause enough chaos, and let the rumor mill do the rest. Alicia turned off the recording. There's more. Hours of it. They've been planning this for weeks. I stared at the device, feeling something dark and cold growing in my chest. They want to destroy my reputation. They want to destroy both our reputations, Alicia corrected. But they made one mistake. What's that? Her smile could have frozen hell. They underestimated us. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Terry worked with the hotel security to make sure we'd have backup if things got ugly. Miriam coordinated with the event planners to ensure we'd have access to the ballroom's audiovisual system. And Alicia made phone calls to people whose names I recognized from the society pages. By Friday evening, we were ready for war. The Fairmont's Grand Ballroom was a temple to old money and new power. 500 of Boston's elite gathered to celebrate charity and congratulate themselves on their generosity. I stood near the bar, watching the crowd and waiting for the storm I knew was coming. DeWitt found me around 8 o'clock, a scotch in his hand and satisfaction on his face. Grant, excellent turnout tonight. Are you ready for the contract signing? Absolutely, I said. Should be quite a show. He looked at me strangely. Show? Before I could answer, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. Heads turned, conversation stopped, and I saw them. Elise and Cory, dressed to the nines and wearing expressions of righteous fury. They'd cleaned up well, I had to admit. Elise wore a red dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, and Cory had traded his orange jumpsuit for a tuxedo that made him look almost respectable. They swept into the ballroom like they owned it, heading straight for the center of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, Elise called out, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. I need your attention. The crowd turned toward her like flowers following the sun. Rich people love drama, especially when it's happening to someone else. My name is Elise Halston, she continued, and I'm here to tell you the truth about my ex-husband and his mistress. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. I saw Alicia moving through the crowd toward the stage, her face calm as a frozen lake. Grant Halston, Elise said, pointing at me across the room, is a fraud, a cheat, and a manipulator. He destroyed my marriage, my career, and my life because he wanted to steal my friend's wife. Cory stepped forward, playing his part perfectly. It's true. Grant and Alicia Lane conspired to frame us for adultery while they were having an affair themselves. They planted evidence, forged documents, and destroyed our reputations to cover their own crimes. The crowd was eating it up. I could see phones coming out, recording everything. By tomorrow, this would be all over social media. I walked slowly toward the center of the room, letting them have their moment. When I reached the edge of the crowd, I stopped and smiled. Interesting story, I said loudly. Would you like to hear another one? Elise's confidence faltered slightly. Grant, don't. No, please, I said, gesturing to the crowd. Let's tell these good people the whole truth. I nodded to Miriam, who was standing near the audiovisual booth. The ballroom's massive screens flickered to life, showing a familiar image. Elise and Cory in a hotel room, very much not discussing business. The crowd's attention shifted to the screens as months of evidence played out in high definition. Hotel receipts, text messages, photos, and finally, the recording from Cory's phone, his voice echoing through the ballroom's sound system. Once we destroy Grant's reputation tomorrow night, we can sue him for emotional damage. My lawyer says we might get millions. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the parking garage. Elise's face had gone white. Those are fake. He doctored those recordings. Actually, Alicia said, stepping onto the small stage at the front of the room, they're quite real, as are these. The screens changed again, showing bank records, credit card statements, and legal documents. Alicia's voice was calm and professional as she addressed the crowd. What you've just witnessed is a carefully planned extortion attempt. Ms. Halston and Mr. Lane have spent weeks preparing this performance, hoping to destroy our reputations and extort money from us through false allegations. She gestured to the screens, which now showed a timeline of Elise and Cory's actual relationship, complete with dates, locations, and financial transactions. The evidence speaks for itself, Alicia continued. These two individuals committed adultery, embezzlement, and fraud. When they were caught and held accountable, they decided to try one last desperate scheme. Cory lunged forward, his face twisted with rage. You snake! You destroyed my life. Security was on him before he took 3 steps. 2 large men in black suits grabbed his arms and dragged him toward the exit as he screamed obscenities at the crowd. Elise stood alone in the center of the ballroom, 500 pairs of eyes staring at her with a mixture of disgust and fascination. She looked around desperately, searching for a friendly face and finding none. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. He's not who you think he is. He's cold, he's calculating, he planned all of this. Yes, I said, stepping forward. I did. The crowd turned to me, waiting. I planned every bit of it, I continued. From the moment I discovered your affair, I planned your downfall. I documented your crimes, exposed your lies, and made sure the world knew exactly what kind of people you are. I walked closer to her, my voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. You want to know who I really am, Elise? I'm the man who loved you for 15 years while you planned to destroy me. I'm the man who built a business from nothing while you schemed to steal half of it. I'm the man who gave you everything, and you threw it away for a trust fund baby with the moral compass of a broken slot machine. The crowd was riveted. This was better than any soap opera. But most importantly, I said, stopping directly in front of her, I'm the man who's smarter than you. I always was, and you never figured that out. You thought you could outplay a forensic accountant at his own game. You thought you could lie to someone who makes a living catching liars. Elise was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks like black rain. You always wanted excitement, I said softly, so only she could hear. You always said our life was boring, that you needed more drama, more passion, more adventure. I stepped back so the whole crowd could hear my final words. Congratulations, Elise. Consider your life upgraded. Security escorted her out as the crowd burst into applause. I stood in the center of the ballroom, watching my ex-wife disappear through the exit, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. DeWitt appeared at my side, grinning like a man who'd just won the lottery. Grant, he said, that was the most entertaining contract signing I've ever attended. When do we make this official? I looked around the ballroom at the faces of Boston's elite, all of them looking at me with new respect. They'd seen me destroy 2 people who'd tried to destroy me, and they'd loved every minute of it. Right now, I said. Let's make it official. As I signed the contracts that would triple my business, I thought about Elise and Cory, probably sitting in a police car outside, finally understanding that actions have consequences and revenge is a dish best served in front of 500 witnesses. The war was over, I'd won, and it felt absolutely perfect.